A disturbing discovery at Allentown City Hall. Police are now investigating after finding an item that resembled a noose on an employee's desk. It apparently happened this morning. Police now working to find out who did this and why.
When black lives are under attack, what do we do?
A call for action and fight for change.
We will not be silenced.
Community members and leaders made their voices heard in front of Allentown City Hall Monday afternoon.
Just to think that people have to go to work in fear for their lives.
A few moments later.
Was all a lie. That is according to police. An Allentown City worker claimed that she found a rope tied like a noose on her desk at work. It sparked an FBI investigation as people wondered if this was a hate crime. Now investigators say the worker staged the whole thing.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the strange way the police caught this woman faking a hate crime using DNA evidence. Let's talk about it. This is LaTarsha Brown of Allentown, Pennsylvania. She works in Allentown's Department of Community and Economic Development. She also is a member of Allentown School Board. She chairs the Legislative Committee and serves on the Education Committee. She represents the school district on the Safety Task Force, and she chairs the city's Human Relations Commission. Here's a clip of her campaign video.
My name is LaTarsha Brown, and I am a candidate for the Allentown School Board Director. Although there are many pressing issues during this race, what troubles me the most is that our board is not united. I see a divide between the decisions our board make and the needs of our students and community.
Now let's forward to January 9th of 2025, where Ms. Brown is working at the Department of Community and Economic Development and also serving on the school board. Ms. Brown had filed multiple complaints alleging workplace discrimination and racism, and she lodged these complaints with the city's Human Resources Department and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission there in Allentown. Now, on January 9th, Brown sent an email to her supervisors requesting mediation to address her complaints of racism and discrimination against a coworker. Now, after completing work on that day, Ms. Brown went home, and the very next morning, she came back to work. Now, surveillance cameras showed that Ms. Brown arrived at her office at 7:11 a.m. She then looks down and sees what she describes as a noose. She immediately then picks up the phone and dials 911.
Good afternoon, everybody. Captain Melkovitz, Criminal Investigations Division. On January 10, 2025, at approximately 7:11 a.m., Allentown City employee LaTarsha Brown arrived at her office on the third floor of City Hall. At approximately 7:38 a.m., Ms. Brown notified the Allentown Police Department that she discovered what she believed to be a noose on her desk upon arriving at work. Officers assigned to the Community Outreach Unit, Crime Scene Identification Unit, and Criminal Investigations Unit responded, initiating a criminal investigation to identify the individual responsible for placing the noose on Ms. Brown's desk.
So now, after local news reports that a noose has been found on a black woman's desk.
Disturbing discovery at Allentown City Hall. Police are now investigating after finding an item that resembled a noose on an employee's desk. It apparently happened this morning. Police now working to find out who did this and why.
And no one knows who did it. Protests hit the streets hard.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
This egregious act is not just an affront to one individual, but it is an attack on the entire community.
Our colleague was threatened. This was an act of terror. This was a hate crime.
Speakers presented a list of demands to city officials, including that the incident should be investigated as a federal hate crime.
So, with all this community outrage and everything going crazy, police went to work. Now, before we learn how police unraveled this mystery, here's a quick message from the sponsor of this video, ZocDoc. You ever do anything weird, something's off? Your eye's swollen, your neck got a weird pain, or you have a cold that just won't quit. And instead of calling a doctor, you scroll TikTok and YouTube like that's gonna fix it. Or maybe you're just too busy. You think it'll heal on its own. Or you're like, I don't know which doctor to go to. Trust me, I've made every excuse in the book too. But now I use ZocDoc, and it makes things a lot easier. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and instantly book appointments. We're talking about over 100,000 doctors from across every specialty, from mental health, dental, primary care, urgent care, you name it, they got it. And with ZocDoc, you can filter by insurance, see who's nearby, and check real reviews from verified patients. Now, simply just pick your time slot and boom, appointments usually happen between 24 and 72 hours, sometimes even the same day. Now, full disclosure, I personally use ZocDoc, and the doctor that I go to now, I found on ZocDoc. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/Nate the Lawyer. The link is in the pinned comment or in the description of this video. Now, back to the story. Now, I want you to stop and think for a second. City Hall in Allentown is probably a pretty secure building. They monitor who comes in and who goes out, and there are probably cameras all over the place. So police had a very narrow time frame here too. She left in the evening of January 9th and came in the morning of January 10th and found the news. So police looked at surveillance and access records and determined who was in the building overnight at City Hall during that particular time frame. Now, authorities identified 9 employees who had access to the 3rd floor between the time frame we're talking about. Now, police interviewed all 9 of those employees, and all of them said we had nothing to do with this. So eventually police called in the FBI. And the first thing the FBI did was take the noose and examine it for DNA. Whoever tied the noose or handled the noose would have left some DNA on the particular noose. So now the authorities asked everyone who had access to that area to provide a sample of their DNA to be excluded from whatever was found on the noose. Now, every employee was happy to provide a sample of their DNA to be excluded, except for one, Ms. Brown.
During the investigation, video surveillance and building access control records were reviewed to identify city employees present on the 3rd floor of City Hall between the time Ms. Brown left for work on the afternoon of January 9, 2025, and her arrival on the morning of January 10th. Those employees were interviewed. Each was asked if they would provide a buccal swab for DNA testing if needed. Every employee agreed, except for Ms. Brown. Initially cooperative, Ms. Brown later requested that the investigation be discontinued.
So as you heard, Ms. Brown was asked to give up her DNA, and she didn't because she didn't have to. See, here in the United States, if police ask you for your DNA, you can say no. Now, they can compel you to give your DNA if they have a court order known as a warrant. And to get that warrant, they need what's known as probable cause. Now, in the simplest term, probable cause means that there's enough evidence to believe that a crime has been committed and the person that you're about to arrest has committed that crime, or the place that you're about to search has evidence of criminal activity. Now, the best way to describe probable cause is with an example. Let's say police are called to the scene of a shooting. When they get there, they see a man holding a smoking gun, and then they see someone on the floor with gunshot wounds. Now, in this situation, the police have facts and circumstances like the smoking gun and the body on the floor with a gunshot wound to believe that a crime has been committed and the person holding the gun is the one who committed the crime. Now, we have to be careful because that doesn't mean this person is guilty of the crime. For instance, the person holding the gun could have just come to the scene, seen the person on the floor, seen the gun on the floor, and picked it up. So even though the person is arrested for murder in this situation, it doesn't actually mean the person is guilty of the crime. And in America, you're innocent until proven guilty. So in the case of Ms. Brown, police needed probable cause to get a warrant so they can get her DNA to compare it with the DNA they found on the noose. So what police did was say, hey, there are 10 people who had access to this area and to this noose. They were able to compare the DNA of 9 of those people against the DNA found on the noose and found that there was no match. So that only left Ms. Brown's DNA to be compared against the DNA on the noose. Remember, she was the only other person that had access to that location. So the police took this information to a judge, and that judge believed that there was probable cause that it was likely that Ms. Brown's DNA would be found on the noose. And that evidence would show that a crime was committed and Ms. Brown was the one who committed that crime.
Those employees were interviewed. Each was asked if they would provide a buccal swab for DNA testing if needed. Every employee agreed, except for Ms. Brown. Initially cooperative, Ms. Brown later requested that the investigation be discontinued. The noose was submitted to the Pennsylvania State Police Crime Lab for DNA testing on January 14, 2025. On January 24, 2025, a search warrant was approved by the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office for Ms. Brown's DNA, and a DNA sample was obtained that same day. On January 27, 2025, Ms. Brown's buccal swab was submitted to the Bethlehem Regional Crime Lab of the Pennsylvania State Police for comparison with DNA profiles recovered from the noose. On March 10, 2025, the Forensic DNA Division of the Pennsylvania State Police issued a written report indicating that Ms. Brown's DNA matched the DNA profile obtained from the swabs of both the outer surface and inner knotted portion of the noose after it was taken apart. No other person's DNA profiles found on the evidentiary items involved in this investigation.
So now people had some egg on their face. Don't forget, we had people protesting in the streets saying this was horrible. This was an attack on our community. Now it looks like it was kind of made up.
It was all a lie. That is according to police. An Allentown city worker claimed that she found a rope tied like a noose on her desk at work. It sparked an FBI investigation as people wondered if this was a hate crime. Now investigators say the worker staged the whole thing.
A local government employee is now facing charges after she claimed someone put a noose in her desk. Turns out she planted it.
Now, officials threw the book at Brown, charging her with tampering with or fabricating physical evidence and making false reports to law enforcement authorities.
The Allentown Police Department conducted a thorough investigation, including interviews of persons, analysis of evidence, and consultation with the District Attorney's Office of Lehigh County. As a result of the subsequent investigation, LaTarsha Brown was charged with tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, a misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, and false reports to law enforcement, a misdemeanor of the 3rd degree. As in every criminal case, the fact that a warrant has been issued or a complaint has been filed is merely an accusation. The defendant is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty in a court of law.
Now, Brown supporters have come out and said, hold the phone. We believe this is a setup and that Brown is innocent.
The incident led to protests and demand for change at City Hall. Josie Lopez, a friend of Brown's who helped organize the rally, claims Brown has faced discrimination and retaliation in the past and is adamant she's innocent. In a statement, she said in part, quote, "This is not just an attack on LaTarsha. This is a warning to anyone in Allentown who dares stand up against injustice. This is a smear campaign. This is retaliation."
All right, so who do you believe? Do you believe Ms. Brown was set up like her friends are saying because this is a systemic problem in this community? Or do you think she just faked a race crime? Let me know in the comment section. The evidence seems clear, but remember, she is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Peace.